Okay, well, joining me today is County Commissioner of Okaloosa County, Nathan Boyles. Thanks for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
I think let's just jump right into it. From that original video that went out, is there anything that we should clarify?
I think really first thing is just to make sure we all understand kind of how the system works today. So I think it's been almost 3 years ago now, 2 or 3 years ago, Okaloosa County started a recycling program in earnest, and we put out 96-gallon roll cans, allowing all of our customers within the franchise area, about 36,000 households or so, to recycle. Roll cans are typically better because you can keep the recyclables dry, they hold a lot more material. And that material has been going for the last several years to the Emerald Coast Utility Authority's MRF. A MRF is basically a big facility where they take recyclables, they dump them out, they sort them, having come from a single stream. So single stream being you can put your plastics and your aluminum and your cardboard all into the same container. They sort out all of the stuff that is recyclable, and it goes off to its various places to be recycled. And then everything else that's not recyclable at the end of the day is considered a contaminant and goes to the trash. And so that's the way the system's been running. Okaloosa County has had a contamination rate of, say, in the 24% range or so, and that's how the system has been running. The reason we got to a decision-making point on the issue was that the pricing for commodities has changed so substantially. And so when we started recycling, Okaloosa County was actually paid on the order of about $20 a ton for those materials, and that inverted to where we were paying $20 a ton, and now we were looking at actually a transition to where we were going to be paying an increase, I think up somewhere north of $40 a ton for ECUA to process and then dispose of those materials and recycle what they could recycle. So that required then a reconsideration of what our current rate was and what our options are. So that's really kind of the background that got us from where we were to where we are today.
With that extra dollar that was initially proposed to charge consumers, would their service be continued on the recycling side?
Yes, so had the majority of the commission opted for what was option 1, if I remember correctly, we would have continued to run the recycling program just as it is today. Recyclables would have continued to go to ECUA. They would have continued to sort, recycle everything that was feasibly recyclable, and the customer would have absorbed that additional cost between the $20 a ton and the $40 or so a ton, and it would have been absorbed in that roughly dollar increase. It actually would have been a little less than $1 at the current pricing difference in order to continue that service as it is. So you would have basically been paying a surcharge for the service of recycling, or an increased surcharge, I should say. Right.
And just to clarify on that point, recycling is taking place now. It's not just going into the landfill.
Correct. Yes, so to be clear, I've seen some Facebook commentary out there where folks saying, well, they're not recycling today. That's not true. We are recycling today. We may not be tomorrow, but we are today. And now there is some very real truth to the fact that not everything that goes in the recycling can is getting recycled. Now, part of that is that people are putting in things that just aren't recycled, period. And styrofoam is a great example of that. Right. So there is a relatively substantial volume of stuff that goes into the recycling can, that goes to ECUA, that gets dumped and sorted, and then ultimately then gets diverted over to a landfill. Yeah. But they were pulling out what we could for recycling. So
it sounded like it's really at this point, aside from the international side of things, it's also an educational issue that the county and maybe even just nationwide needs to tackle a little bit better. So what do you think we could do moving forward to help that education in our county here?
So, frankly, we just didn't do a very good job. When we rolled out the recycling program, there was some very basic early education. I think a flyer went out, and then there's a sticker on top of the can. One thing, recycling is evolving. We've got the whole China issue. It's what is recyclable will change over time on an annual basis, and so we probably need to be more flexible and more proactive and more consistent in our constant communication with the consumer as to what is recyclable and what isn't recyclable. What I've been seeing is folks very much want to know. Your consumers out there, my constituents out there, they want to know how to recycle right, and we just have to teach them. And that's not frankly rocket science. It's anybody with some media savvy could build a plan, right? But second to that, I think would then be enforcement, right? So we have to, I think ultimately, if we were to continue a recycling program and we wanted to reduce our contamination rates, then we would ultimately have to enforce the rules.
Yep.
So, there's a very polite way to do that. You give a friendly notice a time or two. So you have people that are spot checking cans, and if they're identifying things that aren't recyclable, you give a very nice notice to the consumer, educate them. If it happens again in that same location, you give them another nice notice, and you say, look, really, you can't keep putting styrofoam in here, or whatever the case may be. And then the third time, if you've spot checked that same residence and they have just signaled their unwillingness to recycle, they just don't care. Okay, that's fine. We're just going to take your recycling cart away from you. Not to be mean, but so you can't contaminate the recycling stream for everybody else. We'll still take all of your trash. You just have to put it in the trash can now. And there's been no indication of a willingness politically to implement that type of enforcement following education.
Is there any benefit from the county side to having a low contamination rate?
I think so. And so I liken it to health insurance, right? So if you're in a group plan and your claims go up over time because there's some unhealthy people in your plan, then your rate's going to go up for everybody. And then, but you can also do some things to be proactive to try and get your claims down. And you won't see a benefit on day one, but in year 2 or 3, you're probably going to see a benefit in that then your premiums are going to go down because your claims rates have gone down. And I believe it's the same way with this. If we could develop a very clean and a more valuable stream for ECUA, right? So if we limit the things that they can't take, and so if there's a cost to ECUA for sorting every ton that comes through, and there's a cost then to taking that and putting it in a landfill. But if we could limit it to the more valuable commodities that they can actually generate revenue off of, and we could show that our waste stream is a more valuable waste stream, then they're going to charge us less to actually take and process that waste stream.
Were you actually surprised when the comments started going in and emails started coming in?
No. No, but keep in mind, I'm 36. So I was raised probably like you. We went to public school and, learning to reduce, reuse, recycle. And that was kind of a part of what we were taught in school. And so, we kind of came out thinking that's what we were supposed to do. And so certainly I knew that there were, I'll be honest, I don't always hear from constituents that are my age. We can tend to be a little bit less politically engaged, but I'm getting older than I was when I got elected. And I'm finding that people my age is different than it was when I was 28. And they're starting to become much more engaged in the political process. So frankly, I wasn't surprised this was an issue that resonated with what might have been maybe a silent majority or a constituency that doesn't otherwise always express itself at the local government level. And so I was not at all surprised. I think frankly some of my fellow commissioners were a little bit surprised. And I want to be clear that we had 3 bad options in front of us. No one wants to raise anybody's price for anything. No one wanted to discontinue recycling, which is frankly how this thing was was captioned by staff as here's your 3 options. And so I think my commissioners were trying to make the best decision that in their mind with the facts that they had was in the best interest of the constituents, which was to let's keep the muscle memory for recycling, and let's hope that the commodities market comes back. I don't think that was the right way to view it, clearly, because I voted against that decision. But I want to be clear, I don't think that my fellow commissioners were being disingenuous. I think the model that they opted for is a disingenuous model, and that the public, as a result, would simply lose faith in what we say to them about recycling, and frankly, maybe about other things, if they view our approach on this issue.
The trust issue going forward.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of comments about I'd gladly pay the dollar, and there's a petition out there and other things going forward. With even those comments out there, moving forward, is there an option for people at this point to just say, yes, I'll pay the dollar? Or is it off the table? Well,
so, in theory, you could run a service where we just picked up trash for people or recycling for people who wanted it. The reality, though, is you lose economy of scale. And you have to then maintain a list. You have to collect that revenue separately. And so what would be $1 if everyone does it, maybe $10 or $15 or $20. I don't know if it was on a subscription basis. That's an option worth considering. I've had more than one constituent write and say that. I don't know that it would actually work in practice. It certainly wouldn't hurt to give that some consideration. The truth is we can reconsider matters. And so I think that, I don't know what will happen. I was on the minority. I was the one who voted against this. And under Robert's Rules of Order, I don't get to bring the issue back for reconsideration. It would take a commissioner who was on the winning side of this to bring it back for reconsideration. I'm hearing from staff that everyone's hearing from the public, obviously,
Right.
and so it may well be that they want to come back and look at this
Revisit
issue
it.
in greater detail. And again, I think they were trying to make the best decision with the facts that they had at the time. I came to a different conclusion, and it may have been just by being more kind of plugged into, you know, to folks in my age bracket
Yeah.
who do take this type of thing seriously.
Last question, when does this go into effect?
So my understanding is, unless this issue is reconsidered, is that the transition will happen, I believe, at the end of September. So here in a few days, coming into next week, I believe it's October 1st, I'll have to verify that the transition would actually happen to where that waste stream is now being still going to be collected, but it'll simply be placed with the rest of your municipal waste and disposed of.